Okay, thus Hx is a non-empty subset of A of S. So we can now apply our first lemma to conclude that Hx is a subgroup. Let phi and psi be two elements in Hx. We have to prove that their product is also in Hx. Then x phi is x and x psi is also equal to x. This implies x phi psi is equal to x phi psi. This is equal to x psi. This is equal to x. There are some things I am again going to say. We haven't written, according to our convention, we haven't written anything here. Otherwise, we would have written this. This is the composition of mappings, which is there, we understand. Now, according to the definition of composition, this is equal to this. And from those two conditions, we have this. Hence, this belongs to Hx. So condition 1 in the first lemma is true. Note that implies if you apply phi inverse on both sides, or more simply from the definition of the inverse of this map phi, you can see that because the image of x under phi is x, so image of x under phi inverse is also x, coming from the other side. Which implies phi inverse belongs to Hx. Thus, by lemma 241, Hx is a subgroup of A of S. For two distinct elements, x0 and x1 in S, we note that Hx0 intersection Hx1. So here again we are taking an intersection of two subgroups, two special types of subgroups, but nevertheless an intersection is actually the set of those maps that keep both x0 and x1 fixed simultaneously. And just like we have proved that Hx is a subgroup, one can show from this description of this intersection that it is also a subgroup. So one can verify that this intersection is a subgroup of AS. Then the third example, let G be any group and let A be any element in G. Define this symbol to mean the subset consisting of all integral powers of A, that is, I is an integer. Okay, now it can be verified just like all the other things that this is a subgroup of G. Note that unlike the previous examples, here G is an arbitrary group and A is an arbitrary element. But still, using that general situation also we can have a subgroup like this. Let us quickly see the conditions here. First of all, there is no doubt about the non-emptiness of this set. You take all the integers, in fact, in some cases this set will even be infinite. However, it is non-empty. Now if we take, say, two elements of this set, we have to verify whether their product is again an element in this set. So you take the product in the group G. Using the rules of exponent, you have I plus j. Since I and j are integers, I plus j is also an integer, so it is again in A, proving that condition 1 is true for this situation. Also, again, using the rules of exponent, or rather their consequence, this is equal to a to the power minus I. This is nothing but the inverse of a to the power I in G, which turns out to again be an integral power of A, so it belongs to A inverse. So condition 2 is true. So that's why this is a subgroup of G, and this subgroup has a name. One can verify that this is a subgroup of G, and the name is this. It's called the cyclic subgroup of G generated by the element A. That's what it is called. There is a general situation where in place of A we can take a subset. We will see that in the coming examples. These subgroups we are saying because you keep changing A, you take different groups, you get different cyclic subgroups. These subgroups are very special but very important in the theory of groups. Especially in that part of group theory which deals with abelian groups. We will see there is something known as the classification theorem for finite abelian groups. We can classify finite abelian groups in a way that allows us to say that these are the finite abelian groups in a very well defined sense that can be said, and in that classification these cyclic subgroups play an important means a fundamental role. Without them we cannot classify. Especially that part of group theory that deals with abelian groups. You can see that any such cyclic subgroup is an abelian group, and that comes simply from the definition of this binary operation and the rules of exponent. You compute this product according to the rules of exponent, it becomes this ordinary addition of integers is commutative, so you can write j plus I. Again you use the rules of exponent and you have the fact that this is an abelian group. So cyclic subgroups are always abelian, much like how cyclic groups are abelian. Do you remember when we discussed examples of groups, there in one example we have seen the cyclic group of order n. It is just like that, although here the order may not be n. Here the order may be infinite also. It depends on the group and what type of element we are taking in it. Now there is a fact, one point that should be mentioned here. We have already mentioned one part of it. Of course, cyclic groups means in this sense cyclic subgroup of some group. Cyclic groups are abelian, but the converse is not true. Okay, have we really come across a general cyclic group? Here we are saying a cyclic subgroup. You see, a group itself is said to be cyclic if there exists an element in the group such that the cyclic subgroup generated by that element turns out to be equal to the group itself. In that case, we will say that G is a cyclic group whose generator is A, or G is a cyclic group generated by A. So in that sense, we are saying cyclic groups. Cyclic groups are automatically abelian, but there are groups which are abelian but not cyclic. We will see one such example, a classic example. Klein 4 group is there, which is abelian but not cyclic. So we will see that. Okay, now we come to a generalization of this idea in the next example. let G be a group and W be a subset of G. Okay. Note that we are just simply saying W is a subset of G, and not that W is non-empty or anything like that. W may very well be empty. Consider the collection, say A, H is a subgroup of G such that W is contained in H. Okay, so for this subset W, we are considering the collection of all subgroups of G that contain W inside of them. Note that A is a non-empty collection. There is at least one subgroup of G which contains W, namely G itself, because G belongs to A. Now define by this symbol the intersection of all the elements in A. Okay, because A is a non-empty collection, this intersection makes sense. When A is empty, then there is a problem. We will discuss about that at some stage. If A is an empty collection, then the union is by definition empty. However, the intersection turns out to have every possible element imaginable, which ultimately leads us to the idea of the set of all elements, all objects, which however we have already seen in Tau's analysis to be a problematic idea in the sense that it gives us contradictory results in Zermelo-Fraenkel choice set theory. So that's why we carefully avoid the situation where we have to take the intersection of an empty collection. Here there is no problem because the collection is non-empty, so intersection is an ordinary set. Okay. Now the observations that we have been making so far in these examples is that if we take two subgroups of a group and take their intersection, then the intersection also turns out to be a subgroup, but we have only seen this in some particular cases. The more general result which says that the intersection of any number of subgroups of a group is again a subgroup is also true, and we will see that in the exercises. Okay, we will see in the exercises at the end of the next section that this is a subgroup of G. For now we take it as a fact. Okay, we will prove we will see the proof later. Although the proof is nothing very difficult, it's a straightforward application of the first lemma. You can verify it if you now itself you want to verify, you can verify it. And this is just like the cyclic subgroup generated by A. Here it's not being generated by a single element, but rather by a set of elements, W. This, however, is not called cyclic. Okay, it is just simply, this is said to be the subgroup generated by W, or the subgroup of G generated by W. Okay, let us now see what this subgroup, what properties this subgroup has. Since W itself is contained in this subgroup. Why? Because W is contained in every subgroup H that we have considered in this intersection. So W will be contained in their intersection also. That's why W is contained in this, and W itself is a subgroup of G. So that's why we have this in the collection A itself. That means this is the smallest subgroup of G containing W. As such, this is the smallest subgroup of G containing W. Now this definition of this subgroup generated by W has been in terms of subgroups that is from outside. We are sort of, see, this is the group G, this is W. We are trying to cover, although I should not say cover because that is a technical term, but still just informally saying, we are trying to cover this subset W by subgroups of G, say H1, H2, who knows how many different types of subgroups G has which contain W inside of them, and we are trying to refine this cover by considering their intersection, trying to make it as small as possible. There is a smallest subgroup that also contains W, and that subgroup turns out to be the subgroup generated by W. Okay, so this description of this subgroup has been from outside using other subgroups. Now, what type of elements belong to this subgroup? Can we say something about that? We can say in the case when W is non-empty. Okay, now the net has picked up some speed. So assume, okay, but before we consider the non-empty, the case where W is non-empty, let us see the case where W is empty. What happens when W is empty? Note that the subgroup generated by the empty set is the trivial group. You ask me why. You just consider the collection A where W is the empty set. In place of W you will have this. So in this case the collection A will consist of all subgroups of G that have empty set inside of them, and every set has empty set as a subset. So in this case A turns out to be the collection of all subgroups of G, and among all such subgroups we also have this subgroup which turns out to be the smallest possible subgroup of G. So by the definition the intersection will be equal to this, which is also even without considering the intersection, just the smallest subgroup of G containing the empty set. And that's why in this particular case we get the trivial group consisting of only the identity element. Now we consider what happens if W is non-empty.